Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Brandon and Julia. So Peggy says, what I don't understand about Brandon is his big excuse for not moving out with Julia early on was because he needed to save up for their nice wedding. Along with a nice wedding dress goes the flowers, the venue, etc. Now that the wedding time is near, he does a turnaround, no interest in her dress, the church ceremony, nothing. In fact, he gets downright mean with her concerning everything about the wedding. I think reality is setting in, and he is either afraid to get married or doesn't want to get married deep down. Yes, it is interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Earlier on, it was like, no, we can't move out because we need to save for a really nice wedding. And then now that at least some of the wedding aspects are coming to fruition, he's like, I don't want to be involved in that. I hate all it. It's like, which one is it? And my hypotheses about him have been varied, but one of them is that he doesn't really know what he wants and that he is reacting to things and not really knowing, do I want this? Do I want that? There's also hidden hostility that can happen. Anyway, Chris from Wisconsin says, you asked for comments on why we think Brandon was being hostile to Julia about the wedding. I think Brandon puts Julia down about the wedding because he feels ashamed that he cannot afford the wedding that Julia wants. That is interesting, Chris. I could absolutely see that being possible. Britt says, I feel like he feels overwhelmed because he didn't really understand what it meant to be married. He's going to have all this responsibility, and Julia is going to require him to have solid opinions about things while he just wants to be casual and float by on everything. Yeah, interesting. 1-2 says, I'm so confused about Brandon. Just when his parents seem to be accepting his relationship with Julia, he seems to be less interested in Julia. Yeah, that is kind of interesting. I don't know if those things are necessarily connected. I think they're coincidental, honestly, but who knows? Resh says, he doesn't want her to force him to be someone he isn't, but he has no problem trying to force her to be a farmer when he knows she doesn't want that. Double standard. That's interesting. I hadn't made that connection. All right, Mike and Natalie videos. Crystal says, even if Mike wasn't ready to get married, and he has the right not to be ready, the entire way he went about having her come here and not actually work on things is the problem. He wouldn't have an actual conversation with her. At least she would own up to her own parts, at least she would own up to her own parts of the problem. I don't think Natalie or Mike are bad people. I just think they went around in circles. I feel terrible for her. I can't imagine how she felt in this moment. Yeah. Annika says, when I'm upset with people, I actively try to not touch them. That skin contact boils my blood and makes me scorn, so I understand Natalie's rejection of his offer for a hug. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a really rough moment for Natalie, and for her to be like, no, I'm not hugging you right now. I mean, I think all of us have been there before. Daring says, maybe Mike wanted to hug her so he could try to wrestle the ring off of her finger. That's a good one. Andrew and Amira videos. Allison says, Amira dodged a bullet. It may be a blessing in disguise that Mexico sent her back to Europe because it gave her time to see who he really is. Interesting. Monai says, the way he started texting a countdown is how you talk to children when you want them to do something. The way he was speaking to her was horrible, and he seems very controlling and abusive. Could be. Brittany says, I'm proud of Amira for choosing not to go to Andrew. I have been in a number of bad relationships where I stayed way too long to the point where my life was even threatened. Andrew's behavior would only get worse. I'm glad she left so the damage that he's done can be minimized. Yes. Well, I'm glad you got out of it, Brittany. I'm really sorry that you've been through that. It's awful. And it's a possibility that it absolutely could have gotten worse. It often does. Carolina says, I have the feeling that I have a feeling that Amira will always end up in the same relationships over and over again. She should go to a therapist. We all should. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful time to go to therapy is after a breakup. You can assess what happened because it's one of the few moments in our lives when we're like, wait, how did I get into this situation? What is it about my personality? What is it about my history? What is it about my unfinished business with my childhood? What is it about my family, my relational traumas, my schemas that not only played into me picking someone like that, but played into that dynamic that I halfway contributed to, that kept me in the relationship for so long, so that I don't do this again. I have worked with many clients, and it's really a fun exploration of like, let's try to set up your personality so your next romantic relationship will not fall into the same pitfalls of your previous 10 relationships. Jules says, Andrew is such a jerk face. His texts were so abusive and threatening. Yeah, it's funny, the countdown thing, I kind of missed that when I was looking at the screenshot, and then people were texting or people were commenting, there's a countdown. I looked at it again. Yeah, he was counting down. Yikes. Rebecca and Zied. Listener Miranda actually emailed us, went to our website, clicked on the contact page, and emailed. I just want to chime in regarding Rebecca's dumbed-down English when she is talking to Zied. I asked for people to comment on that. I am a white Caucasian, and I met my husband, who is from China. When we first met, he spoke English, but not at a level of a native speaker. So I would also kind of adopt his way of speaking because it was easier for him to understand. I also think it's natural to imitate or mirror your partner in some ways. Even 12 years later, and with his English greatly improved, we still sometimes speak that way. We might say something is so fashion instead of so fashionable. I can also say that when speaking Mandarin, I definitely appreciate when people dumb it down for me and speak slowly. What is not helpful is speaking louder or repeating the words I don't know over and over again. My mother-in-law is very good at speaking in a simple way that I can understand, and I appreciate very much. Yeah, so I think it's possible that that's what Rebecca is doing. I also wonder if Zied appreciates that. We have to ask him, right? For you, listener Miranda, you are saying that you and your partner, it worked well for you, but we don't really know about Zied. The other thing is I think that Rebecca is often talking down to Zied when she gets stressed out. And the what we're calling dumbed down speech, or we should probably not use the word dumbed down. We should probably say like more of a simplistic, elementary way of speaking with sort of shortcuts on syntax and words. I think is when you see it in light of her dynamic with him, it feels like an overall condescending, top-down mother-child way of talking to someone. Now, I think he plays into a little bit with the way he avoids, which makes him look like a child in some ways, and then that aggravates her. But the simple syntax way of speaking, I think it might be aggravating to us, but it's certainly a useful way of talking. I was thinking the same thing. If I went to Tunisia, I would really hope that people would speak a very simple version of their language with me because it would take me a long time to figure it out. Anyway. Okay. Well, before moving forward, I just want to do a little announcement. I am thinking about not having any videos posted on Sunday. As you know, if you've been watching a lot of my videos, we post 2 videos a day, and it's been fun. But I think part of the reason why I've been able to keep up that pace and feel totally fine with it is from the lockdown, that I'm stuck at home. So what else am I going to do? Well, that's not going to be true coming up soon. And so I was thinking, but maybe after the lockdown, and I'm actually, there's a lot to say. So a lot of you have become patrons of the podcast, and actually even you watching the videos when you sit through the ads, it gives me fun so that I can actually scale back on my other work, which I am doing significantly, so I can dedicate more of my time to the podcast and the YouTube channel. And I've been doing a steady transition over the past 13 years. When I started the podcast, it was, I had a very robust practice. I was teaching at the university full time. And over the past 13 years, things, the podcast is getting bigger and my teaching, my university involvement's getting less. My practice is getting less. I actually closed my supervision practice. And anyway, so the podcast is much more dominant. So it's fine. But the point is that I'm worried I'm not going to be able to keep up the pace after the lockdown ends. Plus, I'm getting vaccinated pretty soon fully. And I have so many things I want to do that I've been putting off for a year. I want to hang out with my parents. I want to hug my parents. I want to go to lunch with my parents. I want to go for a walk with my parents. I want to visit my siblings. I want to fly out to see my sister. I want to see all my friends. I want to go to a movie with my wife. I want to go on a day trip with my wife. There's all these little things that we haven't been doing because we've been good citizens and also scared. I don't know what things are going to look like, but sometimes when we don't post a video, people are like, what's happening? And so I just wanted people to know that I think for the near future, no videos on Sunday. I hope that didn't bore you, but all right, let's get back to the Welcome to Plathville. We posted some of those episodes this week. Bill says, I'm glad that you put in the exception that sometimes it's wise to cut off family that are actively toxic and harmful. I struggle with this. I was raised in a very religious and conservative environment. I was sexually and emotionally abused by one of my, by the way, I think trigger alert, because I think we're going to get into some descriptions. I was sexually and emotionally abused by one of my siblings. All three of my brothers have committed sex crimes as adults, and all three of them struggle with substance addiction. Anytime I tried to be better or beg my family to be better, they considered it an attack on their faith. I feel guilty all the time that my child doesn't have a big family, that I left my parents in pain, that my younger brother never stood a chance. I often feel like if I were a bigger, better person, that I could help instead of just leaving. But they don't want my help. They don't even want my forgiveness. They don't want they just want my compliance and my silence. Well, Bill, I'm really sorry you went through that. That is a lifetime of abuse and trauma and mistreatment and unfairness. You deserved better. I'm really sorry you went through that, Bill. It sounds like a lot of people in the family, probably generations, have been through a lot. And I'm just so sorry that happened. And absolutely, there are times when cutoff is a good answer, is the right thing to do. It's the lesser of two evils, as you're describing, Bill. You're just like, I wish that my kids could have a bigger family. I wish that, I wish I could have been there to help my younger brother. But you have to do what you have to do. And I have to say, from your description, there is no justification, Bill, in you feeling guilty. You say, I often feel like if I were a bigger, better person. No one on this planet is the sort of bigger, better person that you're describing. When children go through abuse, and this is one of the biases that we have that actually can interfere with recovery and interfere with our narratives as we recover from trauma. It's actually a big part of therapy when I treat people who have been through childhood trauma is we, as adults, we tend to look back at ourselves when we were 7 through our adult eyes. We say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But if you look at a 7-year-old outside of you, you would never expect them to be a bigger, better person. They're even a 17-year-old. You're just like, they're children. They don't know what's going on. They're powerless. But somehow when we look back in our past, we think, I should have been a bigger, better person. No, you should. There's no possible way. In fact, you probably are a very big, very better person for surviving and doing right by your own child. So focus on that. A lot of people don't. Think about your siblings. They've committed sex crimes. They struggle with substance addiction, I assume, from your lack of identifying yourself in that sibling group, that you don't have those problems. So your brothers had, they incurred similar traumas probably, and are now acting out from their traumas in ways that you aren't. So you are a bigger, better person. So, I hope that your therapist is helping you with that narrative, because you deserve to feel like a strong survivor. Everyone who's been through abuse, and I know many of you have, that should at least be part of your narrative for yourself, is I got through it. I survived. I am now trying to be good to myself and the rest of the world, to my children. I'm trying to I'm trying to break the chain. The cycle of abuse goes back. If you were abused as a child, the cycle of abuse probably goes back generations, if not centuries. And you now are trying to break that chain. You are strong. You are someone that has overcome things. You have temptations, but you're not giving into them. You have temptations to think in very negative ways and very self-righteous ways, but you don't, because you want to make the world a better place. You want to make yourself a better person. You want to make the people around you enhanced by your life. You want to make a difference. And you are possibly one of the strongest people on the planet. For everyone else who has not been through those kinds of traumas, they don't have to deal with those mountains. They don't have to climb those things. They're privileged in a way. They can just live their lives and not be triggered and not have to make those choices, not be tempted into certain things. You overcame those temptations. Maybe you gave in to them at times, maybe when you were younger. Maybe you still give in to them sometimes, but it's understandable. The measuring stick that I recommend that you measure yourself by is, are you better to other people than your parents were? Because if you are, you're doing really well. It's hard for me to actually even say that because my parents are actually pretty great people. So it's easy for me to be good to people because my parents are really good to me. So you're probably better than me and all the other people who, quote unquote, seem like they're functioning well, So really focus on how you've improved on things, because on average, usually we will act like our parents. And if our parents were horrible, then we are likely to exhibit, quote unquote, horrible behaviors as well. So I hope that, Bill, you can measure yourself by a fair measuring stick. Megan says, Dr. Honda, you are exactly right about these parents using, so where are we? Welcome to Plathville? Yeah. Megan says, Dr. Honda, you are exactly right about these parents using their rigid religious beliefs to justify their parenting. Honestly, I think it's the mom's trauma that shapes their parenting more than anything, but they use their religious beliefs to justify it. I can't imagine them ever going to a counselor, especially one that is not explicitly Christian, to seek guidance. That's why you have never worked with families like this before. It is all part of the enormous control tactics Kim uses to keep kids safe. Yeah, so I think that the mom's trauma is a huge factor in the way things are working out in the family. I think the dad's as well, but I think that the mom's is, at least from the very little information we're given, seems to be a likely factor. And yeah, can people use a variety of tactics, including religion, as a smoke and mirrors to justify your rigid belief system and your rigid parenting? Now, the hypothesis that I've had about the mom is it's not that her traumas are making her a bad parent or a controlling parent. I think her traumas make her a very scared parent and a very worried parent. And because she doesn't know the difference between giving a little bit of freedom and taking on a little bit of risk and balancing that out with helping your kids to become competent people in the world, helping them to feel like they matter, helping them to feel like they can influence their own life, make their own choices. She just decides, look, I don't care. Everything else is a distant second to keeping my children safe. And it eclipses all the other tasks that we have as parents. Not only do we have to keep our children safe, which is a pretty huge mandate that we have, but we also have to help them feel competent. We also have to let them spread their wings. We have to let them make their own mistakes. We even have to let them, quote unquote, be exposed to dangers, maybe even be harmed by people in the outside world, so that they can learn, and that they can learn that we trust them to be able to, to be resilient and to overcome those circumstances. The mom, I think, based on the very little information given her childhood, has decided that no one protected her as a kid, and so she is, gosh darn it, she is going to, I always do that, gosh darn it. You'd think I meant to do that. I actually meant to say, gosh darn it. I was actually going to swear, but I don't like to swear because people sometimes, I swear a lot in my personal life and even with my clients and my students, but on the air, there's a few people who don't like it. Listen to my old episodes. There's a fair amount of swearing. But anyway, I think the mom gosh darn it, is going to keep her children safe, and it blinds her to all the other tasks of parenting. I think that's what's happening. I don't know, though. Now, you mentioned something, Megan, that maybe I said I have never worked with families like this before. I don't know what I said, but I have worked with families like this before. Maybe not that far down the road, but I've worked with families who were, I won't identify the religion, but there's at least two religions that are, fairly prevalent in Seattle that are in that direction of high control, no holidays, homeschooling. You have to dress a certain way, insular lives. So, I've treated families like that before. I've treated couples like that before. I have some families and some couples who I remember to this day because of how much the religion and the culture of that religion played a role in the problems. And as a therapist, I always have to balance out, I'm not going to impose my mainstream point of view on them and my values. But at the same time, I've determined clinically that their adherence to this rule set and these regulations is interfering with their ability to adapt to life's challenges. Like, for example, in some religions, they don't let people get divorced. It's just it's not going to happen. And if legally you can, of course, because the government can let you, but you will be completely excommunicated from this insular Christian, I don't want to say cult, but group. And that is the worst thing you could do to someone. If you're born and raised in these kinds of religious insular communities, to be excommunicated is just one of the worst things you could ever do to someone. And some people make that choice and they recover. It takes them a long time. There's actually a whole brand of therapy that deals with this kind of post-insular cult-like community work. It's actually pretty particular. And a lot of therapists don't know how to treat people like this because it feels from the outside, when you're treating people like this, it feels from the outside, it's just like, well, why don't you just change your mind? Just why do you you're telling me you don't like the way that your cult people think, and you want to break free. Well, just break free. Just change your mind. That ignores the ingrained nature of these belief systems that get into your bones. In a similar way, for me, even though I'm mainstream, you could say that I've been indoctrinated into I've been brainwashed by the mainstream culture of certain things. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like an example might be, I like to post pictures of my dogs on Facebook so that my mom can like them, can like the picture, And if someone tried to deprogram me and say, you really shouldn't be doing that because blah, 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 or this and that, or why are you even focusing on that? It's a total misdirection of your intent, of your goals in life. It's meaningless. It's just Facebook. It would take me a long time if you really wanted to get me out of that culture of saying once a week posting a picture of myself or my wife or my animals or whatever on Facebook. It would be a hard thing to sell to me. I would comply if someone really wanted me to. I'm not that attached to it, but to really believe that it's a horrible thing or some kind of other belief system, that'd be hard for me to swallow, even though it's not even that big of a deal to me. Well, imagine that you grow up in one of these cults and you just have dozens upon dozens of ideas shoved into your head on a daily basis, literally from the day you're born, and a very effective way of indoctrinating people and keeping people separate from the outside world, identifying the outside world as worldly and sinful, and they're all going to hell, and we're the ones going to heaven, and they're damned forever, and just over and over and over again. So as therapists, we have to take it slow, and we have to understand where people are at, and we can't just blast them with everything, and we have to live in their world for a while, which might be kind of hard because it might be hard for us to understand. But anyway, yeah, I've worked with some families like this before, but maybe in the video I said I haven't worked with people really far down the road, which, I have not. Liz said, I was cheated. I was cheated out of an education because of a very religious conservative homeschooling. It took me years to get over the grief of knowing that I am intelligent, but because of the way my mother chose to raise me, I didn't have the opportunities I could have had. I understand why these kids are upset and hurt. Yeah. All right, gaslighting. So we did an audio episode, me and Umberto, on gaslighting. Polo says, I'm so annoyed when people on Reddit just use this word, gaslighting, on every single conflict. Yeah. Lana says, a classic example of gaslighting is in the movie Amelie. I love that movie, by the way. Berto does too. Where it was one of the first movies I'd ever seen. It was like early 90s or mid 90s, and it was totally groundbreaking, that movie, and really, it's still, I think it still holds up. I haven't seen it in a while, but where she punishes the owner of a veggie store who poorly treats his handicapped employee. She gets a key to his apartment and switches door handles to a different type, replaces his slippers with a smaller size, and changes quick dial numbers, etc. Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. Yeah, so essentially we have gaslighting for good. Tiffany says, as I was growing up, my stepfather would take items from me that were significant. I would always be looking for them, or I would be punished by my mother for losing them. Additionally, he would take less special items for a week or two, like one shoe, then replace it in a very obvious place. When I was 12, I found a hole cut in the ceiling of my basement where he had hidden these special objects for my entire life. The first thing I bought with my first money, my retainers I had been punished for losing, letters from friends that I had never received, pictures of me torn up, hairbrushes. I'm getting chills. This sounds like a horror movie. I never doubted myself, but my mother only believed me after we found the hole. I'm still getting chills. Like, that's like a horror movie. That is awful, Tiffany. I'm so sorry you went through that. That is, I mean, I'm guessing that was awful for you, Tiffany, right? That must have been, I mean, the trust that is broken in that, and the feeling of where is my, am I actually losing my marbles? Jolene said, I'm just sorry you went through that, Tiffany. Jolene says, as a survivor, I find it annoying that words are used differently because what happened to me was severe and it was abuse, and now it's being washed down. Right. Jolene, that is my thought as well. For people on Reddit to use gaslighting as just a synonym, you know, as a synonym for like, I don't like that person, or that person is being mean to me or something. You know, I'm being gaslit. It's like, you know, language changes and maybe we'll have to come up with a new word. And there are similar words, you know, people will say, oh my God, I'm so OCD. And I'm like, no, you're not. If you had OCD, you would not be laughing about it. OCD is no laughing matter. It's one of the worst conditions you could possibly have. What you're talking about is you're a little particular, or you're a little compulsive, which a lot of people are. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh my God, I'm so particular. Just say you're particular. Don't say OCD. You're not OCD. And when we use these words, it's demeaning to people who actually suffer from it. Amber says, evolving language. The reason irregardless is in the dictionary. Sigh. Yeah. I think it's just one of those things about getting old. You know, I'm sure there are young people today are just like, what? Irregardless? When we were young, there must have been words that were being invented that were driving older people nuts, you know, like emojis. I remember when I wasn't young when emojis came out, but when they were coming out, I was younger, and I remember appreciating them because, you know, all this emailing and texting, it's hard to know the vibe that you're trying to give. There's no nonverbals. You have to throw in an emoji to lighten the mood or to show your mood. And I remember a lot of people were just railing against emojis and LOLs, and I thought, well, it's just a way of communicating. Like, let it go. So at that point in my life, I vowed that I wouldn't be one of those people to, you know, get upset about new things that are happening. Irregardless is a weird one, though, because we don't need it. We have regardless. Why do we need irregardless? But you know, it's changing language. But yeah, bottom line is with gaslighting, as I said in the episode, regardless of the word we use, irregardless of the word we use, those who have been gaslit legitimately, those who are experiencing a system of racism and oppression or sexism or any of the oppression systems that are crazy making, as we're being treated unfairly by a system and we're being told it's our fault, it screws up our head. We deserve justice. We deserve validation. And focusing on the word gaslighting as a totem or a tent pole for am I being validated or not is, I think, not helpful for us. I think we all deserve to be heard, understood, and then allowed to seek justice or others to seek justice for us. And whether or not we call that gaslighting or not. So, for Jolene, for you, you're saying as a survivor, it annoys you that the words are being used differently. Yeah, but I think more importantly, Jolene, you deserve justice. You deserve to recover. You deserved better in terms of what happened in the past, and you deserve validation. So now when you say gaslighting on the internet, Jolene, if you're like, I was gaslit, not a lot of people are really going to understand what you are meaning because the word is being used in a much more broad way now. But you definitely deserve, when you're communicating with people, to say, I was systematically abused over a long time by someone who intentionally was trying to undermine my judgment, and it was insidious. And it was awful, and it was ongoing, and it was relentless, and it got to me, and I'm still trying to sort through the damage that it has done to my psyche. You deserve validation. You deserve to be heard. You deserve people to understand what you're saying. You deserve people to say, wow, I'm really sorry you went through that. You deserve you deserve justice. You deserve someone to make things right. So to me, that's the bottom line. And focusing on the word, I think, is interesting, but I think much less important than justice and validation. All right, everyone out there, tune in next time and take care of yourself and take care of others because we all deserve it. We really, really do.